Who do we, as a society, want to be? I want to offer you a vision of our world where no one has to sleep on a pavement or in a doorway. I want us to imagine a society where we can all feel at home, a world which is homeful rather than homeless. The reasons behind individual homeless stories can be varied and complex. But what if I told you that the solution to homelessness is simple? That it can be done, that homelessness can be ended for good. I will let you into an obvious secret. Housing is the solution to homelessness. Housing first, with support, is the way to help people rebuild their lives. Not housing last as a prize for survival through myriad temporary shelters. But why should you be interested in being part of the homeless solution? Can you recall that feeling when you walked past a homeless person who is sitting on the pavement in the rain? What goes through your mind? What do you feel? What do you wish you could do? You may feel helpless, but let me tell you clearly today, we can all be involved in solving homelessness. This is an enormous challenge and it can feel overwhelming, but lend me your time for the next 10 minutes and I will show you why this is such an important issue to tackle now and what you can do to contribute towards ending homelessness for good. Nearly 30 years ago, straight out of school and with the experience of having come from a loving and protective family home, I volunteered with New York City Relief to help homeless people. I vividly recall talking with young and old, men and women with hard-worn lives etched on their faces. As volunteers, we rose before dawn, cooked soup for hundreds, loaded up a bus with donations from local bakeries, information leaflets about housing and employment, and first aid equipment to help treat superficial wounds and injuries. But when I asked one young man I met what meant the most to him about the New York City Relief support, he surprised me with his answer. It wasn't the food, the clothes, the first aid. It was the connection, that I had asked him how he was, who he was. In that moment, he felt he had regained his humanity, his identity beyond another homeless person. That month in 1991 changed me, changed my outlook, my presumptions, and my hopes for the future world I wanted to live in. I realised then what I know through my research now, that homelessness isn't a personal characteristic. It is instead an effect of social policy failure, a result of insufficient, properly affordable and sustainable housing. But what makes me angry is that we are still talking about this, decades on. I am passionate about housing and home. I want to live in a world where everyone is able to feel at home. I am impatient to find a solution that we can all contribute to. The benefit of ending homelessness for us all is a more humane, harmonious society. But there are also financial benefits too. It is expensive for councils to rent houses and rooms on a nightly rate to provide emergency shelter for families. It is expensive for the NHS to treat the health-related consequences of homelessness. Billions are spent treating the symptoms of inequality, poverty, and homelessness. If that money was spent instead on providing social housing for rent for those in need now and generations in the future, there will be savings, social and financial, in the long run. We have a problem. How many people do you think are sleeping rough in England today? 4,266 people are counted as sleeping rough in England today, and this official figure is likely to be an undercount. What's the percentage increase in homelessness, do you suppose, over the last 10 years? Over the last 10 years, the figure has risen by over 140%. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Across the globe, millions of people are living in precarious, insecure, sometimes dangerous accommodation. We see rough sleeping in our city, Leicester, and we know from our research that some of the issues, particularly affecting homeless women, are the result of trauma. Homelessness can cause poor health, even premature death, difficulty accessing education and employment, which means it's then difficult to afford housing. It becomes a vicious cycle, costly to the individual and to society. The best way to end homelessness is to consider housing, properly affordable housing, social housing, as the first key intervention. Recent analysis suggests that 1.6 million people are on the waiting list for council or housing association housing. Social housing stock has been depleted and we have not been building enough to replace it. So a bleak landscape. Rough sleeping is on the rise. Waiting lists of housing are sky high. But the glimmer of hope? A global pandemic. Let me explain more. Who noticed the Everybody In campaign? Homeless people sleeping rough were immediately given interim accommodation and support in response to the COVID-19 pandemic through the Everybody In campaign. And this gives us a glimpse into the possible future, a glimmer of hope that we can mobilise quickly. We can work together to effect rapid change. This was in effect one of the fastest public health interventions in recent times. An accidental, pandemic-induced experiment brought people in off the street for their own and wider public safety. Now is the time to capitalise on this. We must not go back to business as usual. Let me tell you what I know about how we do this. My research over the last 20 years has shown that there are 6 conditions necessary to create home, and you can see them here. But for now, let's focus on 3 of these. First, security of tenure. This is looking beyond temporary accommodation. Second, connectedness. This is between people, getting to know people and their stories. Third, affordability. Properly affordable social homes to rent. These 3 elements of home are what we should be focusing our energy on in our quest to end homelessness for good. But let me dispel a couple of myths about resolving homelessness. Contrary to popular myth, we are not all equally 2 or 3 paychecks away from homelessness. There is inequality in the exposure to potential homelessness. Poverty is a precursor to housing precarity and homelessness. It is as simple as that. It is also not true that temporary innovations are the answer either. Here are some recent examples that made the headlines. From wheelie bin homeless pods to crisp packet blankets, shipping container flats to miniature modular shelters. Some of these ideas do alleviate the symptoms of living on the street, but they do not solve homelessness. They do not come from a premise of starting to solve homelessness with housing. Imagine if you or your parents or your child had no home to go to, that as a result of a sudden crisis, you were faced with sleeping on a friend's sofa, no longer term options, or worse, on the street. If you could wave a magic wand with solutions to your homelessness, would any of these options be in your dreams? Or would you be hoping for a solution that looked more like some of these? Quality, secure, safe, private, connected, and affordable homes. Social housing. Housing first with unconditional support is the solution to homelessness. We do not need so-called innovative products as a sticking plaster for homelessness. We need to remember that secure and affordable housing with support is the answer. We should all have the human right of a safe and affordable place to call home. We can all work together to create a society that has that value at its heart. The overall solution is more secure and affordable housing. There is a three-pronged approach to delivering this. 1. At government level, through funding to build properly affordable homes for rent, so that housing first is a credible option. We all need to support government to make this decision part of their housing policy and to hold them to account in its implementation. 2. At community level, we can mobilise and connect such that we soar with everybody in. The thing we have in common is that we're all human. And we know from examples in the USA with the Community Solutions 100,000 Home Programme and in Europe from World Habitat's campaign, how important it is to homeless people that we connect. Ask their name and their story before trying to impose a solution. And 3, at individual level, we all have the power to influence in our communities through the use of our voice. We can play our part in reframing the homelessness debate, connecting with and contributing to a housing-led solution. And let me leave you with this. There is another way. By connecting with homeless people, providing them with safe and secure accommodation first, along with unconditional support, we can stop the revolving door of street homelessness. We can build places for which people can create home. This is what you can do now to make your own contribution to ending homelessness. First, make a connection with the stories of homeless people. Remember, we are all human beings. Second, look at housing development plans in your area. Ask if there is enough affordable rented accommodation planned. I hope you can see that housing really is the solution to end homelessness and that we all have a part to play. Thank you.